What's going on, guys? I have one of my favorite non-superhero indie comics, and that is Pistol Shrimp. And I just kind of stumbled across this one. I think I was on Kickstarter when I came across it. I'm like, wow, that sounds pretty interesting. A western with sea creatures. Yeah, sure, let's give it a shot. And this has become one of my favorite ones. Like, I'm always on the lookout for any time a new one drops. I have three of these right now, and I'm gonna go through all three. So you'll get to understand what drew me into this. And I just kind of like abnormal things like that, where you take something simple like a western, but then you give it like a little twist and put it underwater and have them deal with the sea creatures there. And so that is something that I really got into. So our main protagonist, I'm just going to call him Pistol. We kind of follow uh, we take a little bit from like the Dollars trilogy with the man with no name kind of thing. Uh, I just go by Pistol, just kind of make it easier for me to, identify him and talk about him. But we do not know his name. We'll learn his wife's name. But let's just get on into it. So first thing, this is all the Kickstarter backers and things like that. And it's just kind of cool to see something like that again. Never needed, but it's nice to see, somebody who takes the time and just wants to thank everybody by just putting their name on this book and just giving everybody a big old thank you. Again, not needed. Very cool though. So the story takes off. We're at a restaurant, one of those where you just get to pick, your fish or your lobster or whatever. Got a little kid. He's doing just that. He's looking at the tank and he's picking out a fish. And this poor fish, he's like, "Oh no, I've been marked." And I believe his name is Richard. The rest of the fish, they're like, "Oh no, they got poor Richard." And Pistol and his wife Caroline, they're watching all of this happen. And Caroline is just kind of talking over with Pistol and just like, how could we possibly raise our child in an environment like this? Very scared. And Pistol just consoles her and is like, as long as we got each other, there's nothing we can't conquer. And so they are, they embrace one another before a shadow overtakes their tank. And we see the little boy, he comes over and just sneezes into their tank. For which now this poor waitress then has to go dump the tank by her boss's orders. And she does so. Now, I gotta say, her strength is awesome right here. Like, that is... Maybe there's another person over here that we don't see, but damn. I don't know if anybody's ever had experience lifting one of these tanks, even a smaller tank like this one. Them bitches are heavy. So she's got some muscle on her. Now, I do want to just kind of take a moment and just look at, I guess, kind of my biggest issue going into this book. We see this waitress over here. She's carrying this tank, but it looks relatively small. Now, it does appear that this tank is a different one from the one that the boy was picking a fish in. For starters, we have nothing here on the side. Whereas when he was picking out his fish, there is a sticker. Now, my camera's not going to show it, but there are what appear to be three tanks over here, and one of them does have the what looks to be this sticker here. And so presumably, Pistol and Carolyn's tank is like the one next over, but we don't see it over there. So just a little bit of continuity issue here. Again, it's a nitpick. It's really not going to play any factor going forward. And I got to say, this being my biggest issue, that says that we got a lot of good stuff in here. Like, we did pay a lot of attention to just making sure everything else lined up. So if this is the only thing I can really go through after a few reads, and this is the one that really stands out to me. I think our creators did a very, very good job making sure that everything else is buttoned up pretty good. So, yeah, needless to say, she goes over, and I can tell you that there is nobody out over here helping her, because we're going to see what happens. So she's ordered to go dump it, and so Carolyn and Pistol, their whole world's being shaken up. Everything's all wonky, and then suddenly Carolyn gets she's getting flung out while Pistol's hanging on, and we see apparently tanks are a dime a dozen because she just yeets that bitch on out. She has no problem just dumping that whole tank. Like, we're not dumping the water and refilling it. No, that whole tank is gone. And so they're out in the ocean. Everything goes black for Pistol for a little bit, and then he wakes up, and he's out in the big blue now. And so here comes our title, Chapter 1, A New Sheriff in Town. And this is where we get like our artist information, writer. So Charlie McFarlane's our writer, and our artist is Louis Morocco. I think I said that correctly. I apologize if I got it wrong. And then we fast forward. It says 2 days later in human time. And because of that, I decided to go ahead and be a little extra nerdy. Now, I just gave it a kind of a quick glance just to kind of see what the lifespan of a shrimp would be. And mostly I found that it's about 3 years. So 2 days in our time could play a more significant lapse in time for somebody like a shrimp. So presumably it's been maybe a couple weeks, maybe even a month or two in Pistol's time. But we're at a bar or a saloon, and we have our bar owner over here. His name is Sylvester. Now Sylvester gets into some trouble. We got some goons that work for somebody named Big Rocco, and basically they just want money. So they're pressing him for some money, doing some mob tactics here. And Sylvester says, I don't have money. I gave you everything I got. And this one here says, okay, well, why don't you just give us the deed to the bar and we'll call it good. Otherwise, I'll put you in some, I'll fit you with some cement shoes. For which Sylvester's like, well, what does that do? And he's like, makes it really slow, but afterwards we're going to beat you to death with bats. And I got a little bit of a chuckle out of that because I'm like, I get it. The old mob thing is, fitting him for some cement shoes to throw him out in the water and drown him. Well, what do you do when it's a sea creature? You can still use that, but it's like, yeah, that's not going to do a whole lot. So I enjoyed the joke, and I'm sorry I had to explain it for those who maybe already knew what we were referencing. But yeah, that did definitely land for me. I very much enjoyed that joke. And then I kind of wonder if the whole beaten to death with a baseball bat, I wonder if that's a nod to Casino and one of the more well-known scenes from that movie. I don't know if that's just a coincidence or not, but I very much enjoyed everything going on here. But in walks Pistol. He interrupts everything, and he's apparently made like a little bit of a reputation for himself because these guys they're kind of shaking a little bit. They're like, oh, it's Pistol Shrimp. And he gives like the little stare down, that you see in the westerns. And then all hell breaks loose. A rain of gunfire starts breaking out in the bar. Pistol takes cover behind the table. Now we see that it's not bulletproof, and he's at least using it to, make himself hidden so he doesn't reveal his next move to everybody else. They're taking time to reload, and the leader says, don't stop shooting until you see a corpse. Well, from up above, he says, well, perhaps you should aim higher next time. And Pistol jumped up on the chandelier, lets out 3 shots. All shots connect, and everybody's dead, and he holsters his weapon, and this guy's like, Big Rocco won't forget it, you'll pay. And Pistol's retort is just, well, when you bury me, make sure you leave a statue and not just a regular tombstone. I put the extra work in. I deserve at least that much. Just basically like, yeah, whatever. Just make sure if when you go to bury me, fit me with a statue. So Sylvester, he's all relieved. He's like, thank you so much. Whatever drink you want, it's on the house. And for which Pistol says, okay, I'll take a Bloody Mary with a side of answers. And this immediately puts Sylvester kind of nervous. he goes ahead and pours the Bloody Mary, and by which we're definitely playing on SpongeBob rules here. He's pouring a liquid. He's in the ocean. It still pours. We're not going to question it any further than that. We're going to just keep on keeping on. And so he says, word around the place says, you know where my wife and unborn child are. Why don't you tell me? Hands over a picture of presumably his wife, Caroline. And Sylvester's like, yeah, I've never seen her before. And Pistol says, you're selling me a load of bullshit. Why don't you make with the truth, or this Bloody Mary is going to become a Bloody Sylvester. And he's like, well, I might have seen him. And Pistol says, well, where? Well, these people that worship the sky shadows, they took off with her. And he's like, well, where did they go? Out that way. Okay. He pointed to a direction, and there goes Pistol. He's done. He meets up with his little seahorse over here, Reggie. And before they get to taking off, somebody yells out for help. And this poor fish guy, he's stuck under an anchor. Now, Pistol has a moment. He's got the information he needs on his family. He's thinking about not helping this poor guy, but his good nature gets the better of him, and he decides to lend a hand. So he goes over, he says, don't worry, old Pistol Shrimp will help you out. For which this guy replies, I certainly hope that Pistol Shrimp's the guy that's going to be able to lift this. And Pistol says, no, that's me. And this guy freaks out. He's like, oh my God, I'm going to die. But before Pistol can, say anything to him, he calls over his trusty steed and gets a rope out, hooks the rope around this fish guy, and says, don't worry, Reggie's pulled out many a guys. He's like, really? He's like, well, that's at least what I'll say next time I have to do this, being, you're the first. Gives Reggie a little slap, and there goes Reggie pulling, and out comes our little fish friend. But unfortunately, he's missing an appendage here. His poor leg staying under there. And Pistol said, well, man, to be honest, I didn't expect it to tear so easily. That thing just popped right on out of there. But he does catch Reggie. He's got his eyes fixed up top. And we follow the chain on up. And it's like, oh, that must be that sky shadow. And so they follow the shadow out to where there's like a cult meeting going on. And they're basically worshiping the sky shadow and asking for, divine knowledge from this shadow. Now, the shadow brings down a hook, and the lazy bastards can't even put a worm on it. It's just a bare hook. You're not going to catch much with that, guys. At least put some corn on there, just something. What are you baiting, man? But the leader here, he's like, they demand an offering. Bring us the captive. Bring us our sacrifice. So the guy with the cage, before he can even do much of anything, he gets shot in the head. And here's Pistol, and he says, don't nobody else go near that cage except me. The leader demands that the followers, they take out Pistol. So everybody grabs their weapon of choice, and a big old fight ensues. So Pistol's out there. He's just, he's putting bullets in people's faces, and he's dodging this, that, and the other. Whether it's throwing stars, knives, he's taking people out left and right. And then this guy, I believe his name is Albert, he gets a lucky shot in. He is able to punt Pistol, and the leader tells him to go and make sure he gets finished off. So right there, he's right on top of Pistol. But Pistol then punches him, puts him on the hook, and away goes Albert. Bye! And everybody's like, tell us what you find. Well, we already know. He ain't coming back. He's going to be on a grill somewhere. But then the rest surround Pistol, and they definitely have like a worried look on their face. They're shaking, and then they just fuck right off. They're over it. They're done. They don't want to die. And so it's just Pistol in this cage, and he's relieved because it's like, oh, it's got to be Caroline. He opens up the cage, but it's not. It's just this eel lady. She's grateful for being taken out, but was kind of curious why Pistol's so disappointed in rescuing in this rescue attempt. Once he sees her, and he just explains, oh well, Sylvester told me you were my wife over here, and I think he needs to have his eyes re-examined because he's got the wrong lady. For which we get a little fun moment where she's like squinting at the picture, and she's like, well, I guess I can kind of see it from a certain point of view, making him feel a little bit better, but we see like a sad moment. He's like, well, back to square one. So he's got no leads, and he's got to try it all over again. And she's just like, how you gonna? It's a big ocean. How you gonna find it? Find her. And he says, big don't mean nothing to me, amigo. And hops on Reggie, and right off into the sunset. And that is, of course, the end of chapter 1. And that was a really fun little adventure that we went on. Like I was really enjoying myself with each time that I've read this over and over again. And like I said, the only thing that really kind of stood out was the whole tank issue. And that's more of a continuity issue, but it's a nitpick because it doesn't bear a whole lot of consequence for the rest of the story. The point got across that a tank got dumped because a kid sneezed in it. And that's what sets up our adventure. You don't really need to have too much with that. Like, yeah, maybe we could have had the waitress have like a second person aid in, tossing that. Also, the size of the tank seems to change a little bit, but none of that really bears any real meaning on the rest of the story outside of it just being dumped. So could have cleaned it up a little bit there, but other than that, very solid story. I didn't really emphasize any of this, but Pistol himself, he's got like kind of a southern twang to a lot of his writing. Let me see if I can give us a good example. Right here. I'm sorry, partner. I just wasn't expecting to see you. Like partner. And then there's other, pretty much all of his dialogue seems to have somewhat of a southern twang to it, and I do appreciate that. And also with this eel, she has more of like a Hispanic tone. She's speaking a little bit of Spanish there, so you can automatically put that voice into your head. And I do appreciate that from a writing standpoint. That is something I really enjoyed. Like, I can kind of understand what they sound like just based on how the words are written. And I thought that was really, really great. And so I'm really glad that I was able to stumble across this and give it a chance. And I definitely recommend everybody else to give this one a chance. I would say that this is at least a 9 out of 10, like possibly pushing the 10 out of 10. Because really, the only issue I have is that, these first couple pages where our tank seems to kind of change size, and, this not exactly built woman is able to carry off a big heavy tank. Those are nitpicks. But otherwise, yeah, this is somewhere between a 9 and a 10 out of 10. Like, this is a really good story. And so if you'd like something more along the lines of like a Western, this is an easy recommend for me. Definitely check it out. And if this is something that would interest you, be sure to check the link in the description where you can get a copy for yourself, or at least who to follow should another chance campaign arise. But that is all I have for today, guys. So until next time, take care and God bless.